Good morning, and welcome to another episode of A Conversation with Father Orsi. I'm BC Cloutier, Chairman of the Board of Action for Life, and this is Father Michael Orsi. Hello, Father.
Merry Christmas, my friend.
Thank you. Are you in the spirit?
Well, the Spirit's got me. How's that?
I like it.
All right.
I like it. I always find it a little bit difficult, Father, to get into the Christmas spirit here in Florida. You know, when it's 78 degrees and sunny, having come from a northern clime, I really do miss snow and cold weather just during the Christmas season. So
I agree. I mean, I come from up north, a place called Brooklyn. It's near the North Pole.
I by the way, I'm never mind.
You don't want to talk about
It already happened.
Too late. Sorry, folks. Too late.
Anyway,
What were you going to say?
I was going to talk about we're taping this in advance, which we do that. I was going to talk about the Action for Life Christmas Gala,
Oh, it's already happened?
which happened 4 days ago.
Oh. Well, we all had a great time. It was the best party I ever went to my whole life. Put it on your calendar for next year.
We're going to talk about euthanasia today, Father.
Let me tell you, BC, look, kids are the same everywhere.
Yes. What does that have to do with the price of tea in China?
Euthanasia.
Oh,
I know.
oh, sorry. Boy. Ay, ay, ay. So, as of 2024, there are 10 states plus the District of Columbia where physician-assisted suicide is legal. Now, this is interesting that a Gallup poll conducted way back in 2018 found that 72% of Americans support laws that allow patients to seek the assistance of a physician in ending their life. Now, let me give you a little bit of history, Father, in case you don't know this. In 1994, 5 physicians and 3 terminally ill patients brought a federal district court case against the state of Washington for banning assisted suicide. And, it went through the appeals process and ultimately went up to the Supreme Court in 1997. And the Supremes, in a unanimous decision, decided to uphold Washington's ban. They cited the Due Process Clause and argued that assisted suicide is not guaranteed as a fundamental liberty protected by due process. But that case did allow the states to decide independently on medical aid in dying.
In other words, folks, it means that there's no federal law that permits suicide.
Right.
Okay? But once again, unfortunate, but this is a case where the feds have to defer, the court has to defer to the states because there's such a thing called states' rights. The same thing we have with abortion because the states have jurisdiction over certain things, like marriage. States have jurisdiction over marriage, and therefore it's the state that determines who can and who cannot get married. It went to the Supreme Court. The Oberfeld case allowed 2 women to marry each other. So the states had to conform with the state law. Obergefell, that's the decision.
So what's interesting, Father, getting back to to euthanasia, is that it hasn't come up here in Florida where we have so many people who are of a certain age. Now, I'm sure that it will at some point in time, but I look at Canada, and it's also common in some European countries, but Canada is our close neighbor to the north, and they've started euthanizing people just on a whim. It's to me really concerning. I even if I end up with dementia, I don't want anyone else deciding that it's time for me to go. I'll leave that up to God.
Yeah, euthanasia is growing insofar as people believe, once again, that they have a right to do whatever they want with their life. We have this with abortion, but it's doing something that affects another person, literally the baby.
Right.
But the same concept is there, my body, my right. Therefore, if you believe that to be true, then you have the right to end your own life. And there are numerous reasons that they will give. The life is, I'm in pain. It could be physically or mentally. They could believe that they are in a terrible state of depression. This is how far this has gone.
There's a case just recently, a 17 or 18-year-old girl who euthanized herself,
Right.
or asked to be euthanized,
Right.
because of depression.
Right. And this is already happening in the Netherlands, where people can say, I'm depressed. And they say, well, my doctor says it's okay. They have to go through a period of time. They have to consider all the options. They have to be examined by a psychiatrist, their family physician. But if they go through that process and everything looks like, this is really their wish, then we have to respect their wish. Now, suicide, I believe on the books, it's still a crime, okay?
Right.
Because it's an offense against society, taking a life, even if it's your own life.
Right. You can't be prosecuted because you're dead.
Because you're dead. But of course, with the cases where somebody attempted suicide and they survived, could you be prosecuted in ages past? You could be, but they didn't have the ability in those days, as we do today, to determine whether somebody is mentally ill, if they had the full understanding of what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes it sound like there are a whole bunch of safeguards in these physician-assisted suicide laws, but also there's something more. It's not just physician-assisted suicide. There's something now called a suicide pod.
Oh, yeah.
And it looks like a coffin, but that's exactly what it is. And you can rent out the pod and sit in the pod or lay in the pod, and you then can be euthanized, put to sleep. So it's somebody or a society that believes that we have ultimate control of what happens to us in this life and little care for the next life, if there is any belief in a next life.
Well,
and that's the problem, too. There's no belief in the next life, because life belongs to God, and God is the one that gives, and God is the one that takes.
But if you choose to commit suicide, whether it's physician-assisted or not, you can't believe in the next life, because committing suicide is a mortal sin.
Well, in the past we've talked about whatever happened to sin. Whatever happened to sin, we don't hear about sin anymore. And this is even in church. How many times do you hear in church that doing this is a sin? Now listen, folks, Father O is not only present in the Catholic Church. There are certain Sundays where I visit, after I have Mass in my church, St. Agnes, I visit other churches. I try to, at least once a week visit another church and hear what's going on. Yeah. I'll tell you quite honestly, I don't hear much, if anything, about sin. Okay. I haven't heard anybody say, abortion is a sin. You cannot do this. Right? I haven't heard anybody say, physician-assisted suicide is a sin. You cannot do this. You will lose your immortal soul. We don't hear it. And it's up to the churches. It's up to the churches to teach this in church. And I believe it's also for the good of civil society for people to speak out against it. And that means the politicians. BC, I'm going to get on my hobby horse here a moment. Not that I'm usually not. Okay. Clergy have a right to speak out about what is good and what is bad for society. That's our job. If we don't do that, we are responsible, because God gave us, and it's a burden. It's not an easy thing to speak to the sheep and tell them what's right and wrong. Nobody cares anymore, in some cases, what's right or wrong, but they don't want to be told that they're doing something wrong either. Tell somebody they're doing something wrong and you're going to make an enemy. That's what it's like these days. Everybody is, well, I'm free. I can do what I want to do. And that's just the way you see it. I don't see it that way. And that's why we're in the mess that we are in, because the shepherds are not leading, and they're not talking about the consequences when they do not preach God's law and what happens to the immortal soul after death. You know, there was a time, I'm not saying this was right, but there was it's a time frame. It makes an impression. If you committed suicide, you could not be buried in a Catholic cemetery. Why? Because you committed a grave sin against God, and therefore you didn't go to heaven, and you were not worthy to be buried in consecrated ground. Now, we've gotten away from that, and I say thank God we have, because we don't know all the implications that were involved in that person doing what that person did. But that just gives you an example of how serious a sin suicide is, what a serious action it is. And I think that, you know, we have to be teaching these things in the churches, and we have to be challenging the political order. We have to be challenging the political order to say, this is wrong, and we don't think this is a good idea for the good of society. Life is cheap enough without us saying, I'm just off myself because I had a bad week.
Yeah. Now, if someone is terminally ill, and they might want to euthanize or be euthanized, if that person refuses medical care to hasten their death, that is not a sin, correct?
It's all according. There's a little bit of a nuance here.
You're putting yourself in God's hand.
Yeah, but let's. What's the nuance here? The nuance here is this. Suppose that there is a cure available for you.
Well, then all bets are off.
Yeah, unless it is, we call it extraordinary care or disproportional care. Unless you could say, well, this cure is too costly, it's too painful, it's too exotic, it would cause me to despair, just suffering. You don't have to take any drugs. You don't have to take any treatments. But you got to be careful, because sometimes there are many times, especially in our day and age, where in the past you got a certain disease and things, well, you weren't going to last very long. But with medical technology today, it may very well be that you could have many, many more years left. And therefore, the treatment is something that you should take, because you don't want to hasten your death prematurely. There's a lot that can be gained by cooperating with medical professionals, taking the medications, taking chemotherapy in certain cases. In other cases, you might say, look, it's just not worth it. I had a lady once, her name was Rose, just a lovely, lovely lady, and she was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And she said to me, Father, could you come and see me? I want to talk to you. I went to her house, very, very lucid, her and her husband were there, and she said, I have this brain tumor, and I don't want to get radiation and chemotherapy. So I said to her, what does the doctor say? She said, well, he said, if I take the radiation and chemotherapy, I have a year at best. But if I do take the chemo and radiation, it's going to be painful. And so she was talking about, what am I gambling with here? And, what emotional, psychological, and spiritual harm can this do if gradually this tumor is going to take over my body and diminish all of my faculties, sight, sound, hearing, feel, touch, and die. So I said, you don't have to take the treatments, okay? Which is the right thing to do, right? 5 years later, her husband, his name was Al. And Al comes to me, and literally, folks, I'm telling you the truth, this man's eye was popping out of his head. Literally popping out of his head. I said, Al, what's wrong with you? He says, I was diagnosed with a tumor in back of my eye. And I want to be with Rose, and the doctor says that he could operate it on and take it out. I said, the operator, he could take it out, and you don't want it to be taken out. I said, is it malignant? He said, no. Benign. So I said, Al, you got to go to the doctor, and you got to have that thing taken out, because God gave the doctors the wisdom and knowledge how to take this thing out, and you have many more years ahead of you, because you have your children, you have your grandchildren. So he said, I want to be with Rose. I said, look, Al, if you don't do what I'm going to tell you to do, you go to the doctor and get that operated on, you're going to go to hell. He says, okay, I'll go. He lived 10 more years and he enjoyed his family. So, yeah, you got to be able to, nuance these things and see which cases you're talking about, which cases are possible and which is impossible, and how much you could take physically and emotionally. You just can't say, look, I had enough. There were some days I can say, hey, look, I had enough. Give me a shot of sodium pentothal and good night. Yeah. But that's wrong.
Right.
It's wrong. And suppose I did that. I'd be dead a million times.
We're going to take a break. We'll be back right after this. But for the moment, I'd like to talk to you about the expense of airing this program. Many people don't realize how expensive it is to produce this program and to get it on the air. Would you care to guess? It's about $3,000 per week. We think that's a reasonable expenditure, but obviously it's an expensive one. So we need to ask for your help. If you'll go to actionforlife.org and click on the donate button, it would be greatly appreciated. Now, you can donate once or you can donate each month, and we certainly have viewers who do both. We appreciate that. Please take time now to visit actionforlife.org and click on the donate button. Thank you so much for your support, and may God bless you always.
Hi, folks. Over the weeks, you have become more and more familiar with our program, Conversations with Father Orsi. I know that you are enjoying the programs because you tell me that you do. I want you to be sure that you should never worry about missing an episode, because you can go to actionforlife.org and catch all of the episodes that we have produced over the last year. Now, also, extra added bonus, you can watch my homilies, my weekly homilies about the Sunday readings. That's also on actionforlife.org. Lastly, both of these adventures, conversations and the homilies, they cost money. And I'm going to have to ask you if you can help us out, because so many of you tell me how much you enjoy the program. Some people tell me our Sunday wouldn't be the same. We record the program, we watch them during the week. This is an expensive enterprise, and we think it's an important way to get out the gospel message and to talk about those issues of the day that are important to us as Christians. So please go to your website, actionforlife.org. There is a button you can click for donations, and please be generous to us to keep this show on the air. Your Sundays will not be the same without it.
Welcome back to A Conversation with Father Orsi. I'm BC Cloutier. Father, we're talking about euthanasia today and the various ramifications of taking one's own life, even legally. How about hospice?
Okay, very, very interesting question, because a lot of people really don't know what hospice is all about. And I've had the privilege of working with some very fine people who are involved with hospice, and some very fine people who used the hospice program in order for them to die in a dignified way. And those decisions have to be made, once again, by the person, the family, and the attending physicians.
Let me ask you something. These days, as I understand it, I'm wondering if this is true, most hospice occurs at home.
Both.
Okay.
Both. Yeah. So there are people that are in hospice. Now, this means you have a terminal disease, all right? And this means that you are going to die. It might not mean right away, but it's about living in a comfortable way. So we might say the term comfort measures only, and we do nothing radical to the person. As a matter of fact, you might have a DNR, do not resuscitate, on the person, because if you code, say you just code in the hospital, you don't want the doctors and nurses to begin pounding on your chest to bring you back, or they might see that they have you on a respirator, and the respirator is doing the breathing for you, and the lower brain stem is dying and or dead, and they have to remove the respirator. They have to remove the respirator. Now these are different kinds of cases, but somebody might say, let's remove a lot of the tubes. Let's just take off some of the equipment and let this person die in a dignified way, because you're only being kept alive by the equipment. And therefore, let's take all of this stuff off and just give the person what they need in order to die in a comfortable way. Comfort measures only. Now, they can have this at home, and of course, they use drugs. They'll use morphine because it'll take away the pain. And a person can go home. Some can go home and live weeks or months. Had a woman that she was in hospice care in her house for 6 months. The hospice care nurse comes to the home. They're not giving you drugs that are going to prolong your life, but they make sure that you're comfortable, right? Some cases, and it's usually way at the end of the lifespan, will be removed from, say, the hospital, which says, look, we can't do any more, so we're going to let this person go to hospice, and hospice will have, and these are very, well-run institutions where they will have the person there. They might last, a couple of days, they might last a week, but they're given enough morphine, and you can give morphine. This is what people fail to realize. If there is pain, you could give them morphine for as much as you need the morphine to kill the pain. Now, a large amount of morphine in itself might be one of the causes of death of the person. However, that's not your intention. Your intention is to ease the pain that the person is going through. And so hospice is going to use drugs. They're going to help the person to die in a peaceful, in a comfortable way, and usually in a very pain-free way. Now, there's a hospice that I'm very familiar with. When people go to this hospice, of course, their family is allowed to visit with them. There is an opportunity for them to even hear their favorite songs that they loved. And there's a woman, she's just a lovely young woman, and she goes from room to room and asks, what's your favorite song? And, as these people are in the process of dying, or they might be kind of drowsy from the drugs, she'll sing their favorite song.
Wow, nice.
My Way, New York, New York. And it has a sense to it that this is a peaceful way of dying. If you're in the military, they will bring into your room a blanket from the military organization that you were part of, branch of the service, Navy, Army, Air Force, and put that over your bed. So they try to make it as dignified as possible and as sensitive as possible to the person and to the family So hospice does some very, very good work. As I said, you just can't decide that you're going to walk into hospice.
Right.
You have to have a situation where your life is at its end, and it's futile to continue to give you drug after drug or treatment after treatment. And hospice is to let you go, leave this life. They call it a term now they're using, transitioning. This person is transitioning, and that's a nice sense. Yeah, transitioning from what? This life to the next. Yeah. So hospice is an option. It is an option. It is not physician-assisted suicide.
Right.
Okay? It is not. It's letting nature take its course.
Well, the one thing we know, Father, is that we all have an expiration date, but only God knows what the date is.
That's right. That's right. And, folks, we should live our lives knowing that we do have an expiration date and we don't know when it's going to be. And we should always be ready. And that was one of the things that we were always taught, that if your life is demanded of you, we got that right in the gospel. This guy says, hey, look, I got it made. I got plenty of stuff. My barns are full. I can say now, eat, drink, and be merry for years to come. You fool. Your life is going to be required of you this night. And you have to ask yourself, are you ready? Remember, we used to go to bed at night and we had that prayer, angel.
Different
angel one. God, my guardian angel, commit me here. Yeah. No, that's the guardian angel. No.
Mine was, now I lay me down to sleep.
Yeah.
I pray the Lord my soul to keep.
That's right.
If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take.
Now, how about that? Do you hear that anymore? Because even as children, you say, you don't know. You always have to be ready for when God is going to call you. A lot of people, when they wake up dead and they find out that they're in the wrong place, with it. They're not ready. I scare myself sometimes. If I commit a sin, I say, oh gosh, I gotta tell God how sorry I am. I got a good confession. If it's a big sin, you got a good confession. But you have to always be ready for that time when God is going to call you. You don't know. There's car accidents. There are people that they think they're in the best of health, and all of a sudden they just drop dead. I've been there. I've seen that.
Yep. And we've all experienced, not personally, but through others, those kinds of scenarios where all of a sudden you just unexpectedly lose somebody. So anyway,
I think we should say that prayer more often to remind us that life is fragile, and that we have to keep our souls in good. We talk about souls a lot these days because people forget about the soul. But we have to keep the soul healthy because the soul lives forever, and that soul has to be judged by Almighty God. So, keep in mind, like BC says, there is an expiration date. We usually don't know when.
For better or for worse.
For better or worse, yeah.
That's it for this week. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you'll join us again next week for a conversation with Father Orsi. I'm BC Cloutier. Until next week, thanks so much for joining us, and God bless.